The cabin was quiet, in the uneasy way that only exists 30,000 feet above the ground, where strangers share air and silence pretends to be peace. The flight had been delayed, tempers were thin, and the hum of the engines carried an edge that made every sound sharper. A black teenage girl sat by the window in the middle section, her backpack tucked between her sneakers, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had boarded early with her mother, who now slept with her head tilted toward the aisle, exhausted from a long shift at work. The girl stared out at the wing, counting clouds, trying not to feel how small the seat made her feel. Across the aisle, a white woman shifted impatiently, pressing the call button with a manicured finger. She sighed loudly, glancing at the girl with a look that carried judgment before a single word was spoken. When the flight attendant arrived, her smile was already strained, the practiced politeness of someone rushing to solve a problem that shouldn't have been one. The woman leaned closer and whispered something, nodding toward the girl's seat, as if pointing at a misplaced bag instead of a person. The attendant straightened, her eyes narrowing just enough to notice. She turned to the girl and spoke sharply, her voice cutting through the cabin noise. "Give her your seat, now." The words landed heavy, like a command that assumed obedience before consent. The girl blinked, confused, glancing at her sleeping mother and then back at the attendant. She had checked the boarding pass twice, memorized the seat number because flying still made her nervous. "This is my seat," she said softly, her voice barely louder than the engine's low roar. The attendant's expression hardened, impatience flashing across her face. The white woman crossed her arms, lips pursed, satisfied that authority had been summoned on her behalf. Other passengers pretended not to watch, though their eyes flicked back and forth, curiosity mixing with discomfort. The girl felt heat rush to her cheeks, the familiar sensation of being singled out without understanding why. She shrank slightly, shoulders curling inward, as if making herself smaller might make the moment pass. "I need you to cooperate," the attendant said, lowering her voice in a way that felt more threatening than calm. The girl's mother stirred, sensing tension even through sleep. She opened her eyes just as the attendant repeated the demand, louder this time. Their mother straightened immediately, confusion giving way to alarm as she took in the scene. She asked what was happening, her voice steady but edged with disbelief. The attendant gestured vaguely, explaining that there had been a seating issue, that the girl needed to move. The mother asked to see the boarding passes, holding hers out first. The numbers matched, clear and undeniable. A pause stretched between them, long enough for the surrounding passengers to lean in slightly, their silence now heavy with expectation. The attendant hesitated, then waved the passes away, insisting there had been a mistake in the system. The girl watched the exchange with wide eyes, her heart pounding so loudly she wondered if others could hear it. She felt embarrassed, exposed, as if the entire plane had decided she was a problem to be solved. The white woman scoffed under her breath, muttering about comfort and respect, words that felt bitter when aimed like weapons. The mother remained calm, but her jaw tightened, a sign the girl knew well. It meant she was holding back anger for the sake of survival. A man a few rows back finally spoke up, his voice carrying across the aisle. "She's in her assigned seat," he said simply. Others murmured in agreement, nodding, their courage growing in numbers. The attendant's face flushed, authority slipping as witnesses multiplied. She glanced toward the front of the plane, clearly reconsidering her approach. The white woman protested, insisting she had paid more, that she deserved better, that someone should fix this inconvenience immediately. The girl felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear but from humiliation. She hated that her presence had become a debate, that her right to exist comfortably required a defense. She remembered her grandmother's words about dignity, about standing tall even when others tried to bend you. She lifted her chin slightly, meeting the attendant's gaze for the first time. "I'm not moving," she said, her voice shaking but firm. Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. The engines hummed on, indifferent to human conflict. The attendant exhaled sharply, then turned away, muttering something about checking the manifest. She disappeared down the aisle, leaving the white woman fuming and the girl trembling with adrenaline. The mother placed a hand over her daughter's, squeezing gently, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. When the attendant returned, her demeanor had changed. She avoided eye contact as she informed the white woman that her seat was actually several rows back, near the restroom. The woman's outrage filled the cabin, but it no longer held power. Passengers watched openly now, some shaking their heads, others whispering support toward the girl and her mother. The white woman gathered her belongings angrily and stomped away, her complaints fading as she moved toward the back. The girl released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her body felt heavy, drained, but also strangely light. She had stood her ground, even when fear told her to disappear. The mother kissed her forehead, pride shining in her eyes. Around them, normal sounds resumed, conversations picking up, phones unlocking. As if the moment had already begun to fade from collective memory. Yet the girl knew she would remember it clearly. She would remember how quickly she had been judged, how easily authority had been used against her, and how powerful it felt when truth and courage aligned. She looked out the window again, clouds drifting endlessly, and imagined a future where she wouldn't have to prove her worth in public spaces. A future where her seat, her voice, and her dignity would never be questioned. As the plane took off, lifting them into the sky, the girl felt a quiet resolve settle inside her. The world might challenge her again, might demand she move, shrink, or stay silent. But she had learned something important in that cramped cabin. She belonged exactly where she was, and no one else had the right to tell her otherwise. The flight continued, but the emotional turbulence lingered far longer than the physical ascent. The girl replayed the scene in her mind, every word and glance looping like a song she didn't want stuck in her head. She wondered how many times similar moments had happened without witnesses, without someone speaking up from a few rows back. She wondered how often people like her mother had swallowed anger just to get through the day without consequences. These thoughts pressed against her heavily, demanding space and reflection. Her mother leaned closer and spoke quietly about strength, about knowing who you are even when others try to rewrite you. She admitted that moments like this never really stop, that they change shape as you grow older, but they don't disappear. The girl listened carefully, absorbing each word like a lesson she hadn't known she was studying for. She realized that what happened wasn't her fault, and that understanding alone felt like a shield. A flight attendant from another section stopped by later, offering water with a gentle smile and an apology that felt sincere. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it mattered. The girl accepted the cup, meeting the woman's eyes, recognizing kindness when it appeared. It reminded her that the world wasn't only made of sharp edges, even if they cut deeply when encountered. Balance existed somewhere between harm and hope. As the hours passed, the cabin lights dimmed, and many passengers slept. The girl stayed awake, watching reflections ripple across the window. She imagined telling her friends about this moment, wondering if they would be surprised or nod knowingly. She thought about school discussions on fairness and equality, how abstract they often felt compared to the raw reality of being singled out in public. Theory never captured the sting of a raised voice, or the weight of collective silence. She promised herself she would speak up for others when she could, remembering how much it meant when someone spoke up for her. Courage, she realized, wasn't loud or perfect. Sometimes it was a trembling voice refusing to move. Sometimes it was a stranger deciding that comfort mattered less than justice. These realizations settled into her, shaping the person she was becoming. When the plane began its descent, the girl felt a strange sense of closure. The incident hadn't ruined the journey, though it had changed it. She gathered her things calmly, helping her mother, moving through the aisle with a new awareness of her own presence. She noticed supportive smiles from a few passengers, small acknowledgments that felt like quiet apologies from a world still learning. As they exited the aircraft, the girl stepped into the terminal with her head high. The noise of the airport swallowed the last echoes of the cabin conflict, but the lesson remained. She understood now that dignity was something you carried, not something granted. And no matter how many times someone tried to take her seat, she would remember this moment, and she would remember to stay. The terminal lights were harsh, but they illuminated something new inside her, a confidence she hadn't felt before boarding the plane. She watched people rush past, each carrying unseen stories, unseen battles, and she wondered how many were shaped by moments like hers. The world felt larger and more complicated, yet she felt stronger within it. Outside the airport windows, the evening sky stretched wide, painted in fading colors. Her mother suggested getting something warm to drink, a small comfort after a long day. As they walked, the girl felt grounded, aware of every step. She wasn't defined by the confrontation, but she wasn't erasing it either. It was part of her story now, a marker of growth. Later, lying in bed, she replayed the scene one last time before sleep claimed her. This time, it didn't hurt as much. Instead, it reminded her of resilience, of the power found in standing still when pressured to move. She knew challenges lay ahead, but she also knew she could face them, tomorrow and every day after. She would carry herself with the knowledge that she deserved space, respect, and a voice, and that knowledge, once claimed, could never be taken away. Sleep came gently, and when morning arrived, the girl woke with clarity. She thought about how stories travel, how moments like hers become lessons when shared. She decided she wouldn't stay silent about what happened, not to seek sympathy, but to speak truth. Silence, she understood, often protects the wrong side. At breakfast, she and her mother talked openly, laughing softly between serious reflections. The tension from the flight loosened its grip, replaced by connection and understanding. The girl felt older somehow, not burdened, but aware. Awareness, she realized, was a form of power. She stepped outside into the new day, feeling the sun on her face, ready to move forward without shrinking. Wherever she went next, she would carry this certainty with her, steady and unyielding, like wings holding firm against the sky. She smiled quietly, knowing her journey was only beginning, and that every challenge would sharpen her sense of self. With each experience, she would grow more assured, more rooted in truth. The world might test her again, but she was ready now. Ready to remain seated in her worth, grounded in courage, and unafraid to be seen. This moment had taught her that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it simply refuses to move. She carried that lesson forward, steady, patient, resilient, determined, hopeful, grounded, unbroken, always, forever strong.